This episode of Indie Mogul is brought to you by Squarespace. All of the extras are dancers.
Yeah.
How does a shot like this even get shot?
It's so seamless now that your brain goes like, oh, half the series, one of my electricians is dressed as a lamp operator.
What did you do about the hard light?
It just was hard.
What about for close-ups and things like that?
It's just hard on the close-ups.
All right. What's going on, Indie Mogul? Today I'm here with Emmy-winning David Mullen, ASC, the cinematographer behind the show Marvelous Miss Maisel. Maisel is coming back next month, so today we're going to do a walkthrough of the camera choices, the lens choices, the lighting, and then also walk through a couple of the scenes and how they were actually accomplished. How was the experience of shooting Marvelous Miss Maisel?
It's an extremely fun show to work on.
Yeah.
A bit exhausting, but fun. The big issue was just, what is the period look for this show? We wanted it to be vibrant, energetic, and lively, but still feel like something of the aesthetics of the 50s in terms of color schemes and stuff. So a lot of it was about looking at historical reference combined with period photography. Advertisements are a big thing in movies to work out the color schemes and things. But camera-wise, I felt like the Alexa would give us the most filmish quality shooting digital. We ended up at Panavision lenses, and I chose Primo lenses because I wanted to use fairly low-flare, modern lenses because we do so much camera work that constantly looks into lights and windows, and I have to do 360-degree shots on location, that if a lens flares too much, then it could be distracting over the actors. And I could control that better with filters. I've just been using the Hollywood Blackmagics for several years. I'm very familiar with these filters. The trouble is that there occasionally still a shot where you're shooting into such a bright light or bright window or a light hitting the lens that you see some weird ring or some sort of strange glow. I tested various diffusion filters. The best were the Tiffin black diffusion effects filters. So I use those when I have bright lights or bright windows. So sometimes I will mix and match filters. If I want more of a hazy glow and less of the blurry glow, I would play around with the types of filters. Amy doesn't want tight shots, so even though we're moving around in tight spaces, she wants to keep it like waist up. So that tends to push you into wider angle lenses. We'd go 24 on the wider shots. We use the 30 a lot for our coverage. Although when we get into the performances with multiple cameras, I go to zoom lenses often.
Let's break into one of these performances right now. We can start off with the first scene. Let's play the clip.
Well, this is the opening of the pilot episode of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It's a flashback to the day of Midge's wedding to Joel.
Because fitting into this dress required no solid food for 3 straight weeks. Who does that? I do. This day is perfect. It's like a dream. Or a nightmare, if you're my father.
So it sets up a lot of the tone of the show, her talking in front of a microphone being the most obvious one. So we went for this Dr. Zhivago Winter Ice Palace theme look, but I didn't want to light the actors with blue light.
So it's a square room right here.
Center door like this, and there's a door in the background, and then there's windows on this side, and there's some little windows on this side. So I put a square lighting balloon right over her.
And this just floated up with helium right above her.
Right. I had to move it around a little because what I've learned with top light is that if you're lighting a person, especially an actress, that you want to look attractive, you don't want them under the center. You want them on the edge. You want them standing here so that they're slightly front top lit rather than...
So some of this light can kind of come in and fill in those
So it's not too toppy. Because the balloon went this way, her parents are sitting back here, and her friends and family are all farther from the center of the balloon. I had to hide a few Licos around the room.
So these, you probably put them right here, and these are bouncing into the ceiling and then bouncing back down.
Yeah. There's also 4 chandeliers basically doing the corners of the room. And then they added some chandeliers on the stage. Hidden in the beam of the stage, I hung 2 daylight Kino flows, so they put a bluish soft top light on the band.
And then this is just natural daylight coming in.
Yeah, I might have had a little bit of HMI bounce to add to them as the light changed, because I did have some mix of sun and then no sun, and knowing that the next sort of flashbacks would be warm, I wanted to keep this on the cold side. So that was the basic approach to the wedding. They basically said they didn't want a golden honeycomb sepia tone look for the show, even though it's set in the past. So I have to be very careful about what scenes I choose to be warm. That's why if I have a lot of warm scenes in the show, I will try to punctuate it with a scene lit with some blue light. I'd say most of the time it's a single camera show because we move the camera so much.
Yeah.
But when we get into these crowd scenes and performance scenes where she's in front of a mic, it becomes a multi-camera show where we have 2 to 3 cameras running, just trying to get as much as we can within the time we have. There's a montage that opens episode 4, which is the day she moves out of her apartment. It match cuts shots of her the day she moved in with the day she moves out. And at some point I just committed to feeling like the day she moves out should be kind of cold and overcast, and the day her happy memory should be warm and golden. So knowing that, I knew that even though we matched the angles, there would be a shift in color when we cross-dissolved from the past to the present. But then we climaxed with a shot that had to be completely seamless, where she was circling her during a New Year's Eve party, and then as we're circling her, suddenly the room is completely empty, and it's the day she's moved out, and now the apartment is completely empty and it's daytime. Amy said when we circle her, I want it to transition to the present and not see the transition. I want it to be as invisible as possible.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on, rewind that one more time. Okay, party.
So this was shot before lunch.
Yeah.
And then right here, we repeated the move. And so how are you going to hide that transition if she's
How are you
wearing...
going to change the color change?
Well, even
she's
things
moving?
like I said, if she's wearing one outfit in one scene and another in the other, you're going to see the outfit change. You're going to see her hair.
Yeah.
If it's, what she described essentially as a morph, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to morph from one shot to the other and make it as invisible as possible. But then you have to start thinking, well, what's going to change? Her clothes are going to change, her hair is going to change, the walls are going to change.
Yeah.
It's a moving shot. So I tried to have the moment of transition happen the moment there was a blank wall behind her head, so you wouldn't see the furniture magically disappear in the shot.
You want the perfect moment it happens to be empty to
and then
transition
so we end
into
up having to
emptiness.
redesign her party dress so that it was a similar in design to her moving day outfit, so you wouldn't see sleeves disappear, like go from a sleeveless dress to a sleeve dress. The two outfits are similar enough, her hairstyle is similar enough, but even then I still had to deal with the fact that we go from a night scene to a day scene. Even though it was a day scene and she would be lit more from the windows, I had an overhead soft top light for the night party scene that I kept on for the day scene. And we actually shot the day scene right after lunch because the visual effects supervisor was worried that we would have too many changes if we shot them on different days. And it's something that normally you would do with motion control to have a perfect match dissolve. There's no way to do this with motion control, so it had to be a Steadicam. Essentially, we shot the past shot and then we played it back on the Steadicam monitor with an overlay, so the Steadicam operator, Jim McConkey, could line up the walls and the furniture and the fireplace behind her head as best he could. And then after he sort of practiced it enough, he didn't do every take with an overlay. The visual effects Leslie Foster Robson had to steal bits and pieces of each take to get the mantelpiece and everything to line up. It wasn't just a simple straight morph, but it's so seamless now that your brain goes like, oh,
That is crazy. Let's move on to the next scene. Here we go.
in the pilot, you see this big Steadicam move, like the Goodfellas, where you're out in the street and you follow someone, and you end up going through the door and you see the whole room. You see a band playing on stage, and you follow Midge all the way up to this bar counter here.
Oh.
It won't be at 1:45.
Oh my God, with a one-track mind. Go, sit, let the master work.
A lot of people today like soft lighting. It's more flattering. We shot the Gaslight originally in the pilot in a black box theater space that was in the East Village. Gaslight, is a real historical place, and we had reference photos, but the reference photos were all like shot with flash photography. They have no feeling for what the lighting might have been like. I have to light the audience, I have to light the bar area, and I have to light the stage. But it's essentially it's a raised seating area, and there's a raised stage area with a piano. This room has these kind of acorn lights. They're just like 6 or 8 of them in the room that sort of give you a
general warm.
Yeah, but they're
ambient.
dimmed down, so they don't really do much other than put a little dim fill light on everyone. All through the room, there was a grid, pipe grid that I could hang from. Amy was very concerned that she didn't, even though I had all these lights in this room, that she didn't want the room itself to be too bright. She wanted the stage to be bright and the audience to be in the dark. I needed some lights on the audience because partly we have dialogue in the audience sometimes, but dimmed way down. So I tried to keep them backlit, sort of just etched out. The question was, when she started performing, is do I put a follow spot dead center or do I do it from the corners? 80 to 90% of the series, it was always this one here. So we had a Lico, and half the series, one of my electricians is dressed as a lamp operator.
What did you do about the hard light in terms of,
This was hard,
softening it? It was just hard. What about for close-ups and things like
It
that?
was just hard on the close-ups.
All right.
Amy wanted to do a 360-degree crane move that was not a dead overhead circle, but she said it was more like a Ferris wheel ride that was high at one end and low at the other. So the camera is doing this weird loop from high to low as they dance. This is a flashback, and it's not a fantasy. So I thought, well, it's a dance number. He takes her dancing. It would be kind of cool if there was some colored lighting, but I can't justify it. It's not a fantasy, right? It's happened in reality.
Actually, it was real.
Well, after we scouted this, Amy said, could we have the light just changed, like to some colored lighting, like to, and I was like,
You guys were on the same brainwave.
yeah. Normally, when the camera circles,
Yeah.
the best way to light people is from the center of the circle, so then the camera's not shadowing them. But the trouble is the circle is being created with a crane arm doing this, so I knew the arm of the crane would cross the center, and I couldn't light them from the center, so I had to light them from under the high point of the crane. Wherever the camera's the highest is where the light is hitting them, so hopefully the arm is not throwing a shadow. So this is 7th Avenue, I think, and Manhattan. So the diner is here in the middle, and so we had a whole scene in the diner, and then they come out, and he stands in the middle of the street, and she's on the sidewalk. And as they kiss, we attach the Movi to the techno crane.
So you guys are literally live rigging it and
We have
changing it
basically
over.
a magnet system, so we attach it with a magnet to the techno crane, and we put a safety chain on it. So the techno crane is here on the sidewalk like this, so it's, the move goes high here, and then it swings around and then drops down back to here again low. So it's the arm swings through the center of the circle. The camera's looking back at the arm.
Yeah.
To light this for a dance number where the light actually changes from white to pink. At the start of the shot, I have one condor with white light lighting the whole block. And then next to it, I have another condor with a pink light on it that fades up. Then way over here, I had another condor just to put some fill light this direction on them.
The key here is that one's here. The
light on this condor is still lower than this camera position, so the light itself is getting under the lens and lighting them. So
it lights it from underneath it.
if they had been the same height, then what happened is this high point, I would have had a big shadow of the camera on everything here. So this light has to be lower than this camera at this point.
And now, before we move on, I want to talk to you about our amazing sponsor, and that is Squarespace, who actually helped us make our beautiful Indie Mogul website and could potentially help you out as well. Maybe you just graduated from film school. Maybe you found photography to be your new passion in life. Whatever the case may be, you're going to need some kind of visual portfolio to show people all the work that you're capable of. You're going to save a ton of money. You're actually going to come out with a modern-looking webpage. I actually also really like the video backgrounds feature. In order to do that, all you have to do is actually just import a video into a custom overlay, stretch it as far as you can, and boom, it is that simple. So head on over to squarespace.com/IndieMogul to start a 14-day trial, and you'll actually get 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you again to Squarespace. And now, back to the episode.
Amy likes to hire dancers to play extras. So many of these shots are so complicated that we need extras that can time themselves to the camera. So she'll bring in our choreographer, Marguerite.
It makes sense. It makes perfect sense. They're dancing to a beat. They're dancing to a rhythm. The shot is so fast.
The story point is that she's been, after the first season where she gets confronted in the Altmans, she gets demoted. So we begin the second season, she's now been demoted to the switchboard room in the basement. This had to be choreographed for a couple days. They were practicing in the set. And then we saw rehearsal and then had to figure out how to move the camera with her. And we ended up going with the Movi on a stick. He's holding it on the end of a pole.
But he's still holding that with his arms?
Yeah, that's Larry McConkey. And Jim McConkey's on the wheels operating while Larry is on the pole. Because a Movi move is really a two-person job. Two people are in sync with each other. We started high and we pushed down on the basket and immediately tilt up fast.
Yeah.
and then follow the letter basket around until we enter the room. And as we enter the room, the question was which side of the heads do we decide to do the hardest thing and go between the heads. Which meant each person had to lean out of the way of the movie. I had to have art department install these light bulbs along the switchboards so they would have light in their eyes. And I decided to gel the fluorescence above them with some blue-green gel so they would have this kind of cyan quality, and then the light bulbs would create a color contrast again. Because otherwise the only light was the fluorescence in the center of the room, which was throwing a shadow on their faces.
How are you not worried about the movie blocking the light coming
Well, that was the
into
other
switchboard
problem I
as
had.
well,
It's
too?
like I was worried I would see a shadow of the movie crossing every light bulb on their face.
Yeah, because these are the light bulbs here. They're
But
coming on.
luckily it didn't. Each person has to get out of the way of the camera, but then get right back into position again.
She's smoking the whole time, too. David, what on...
Yeah. And this is a case where I had to switch the filters because I told you that sometimes with lights in the frame, you get a weird halo from the Hollywood Black Magic.
Yeah.
So I had to use the Tiffin Black Diffusion Effects filter for
Because
this
you're
shot.
shooting these lights
Because
head on.
Yeah, as I passed each light bulb, they were so big in frame, and I got this strange halo glow from the filter. It was interesting, but it's also a little distracting. I don't want the audience to look and
At
think
the
about
lights,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
sometimes you get a weird glow and your eye goes to it, and then they're not looking at the actor, they're looking at the strange halo.
It's honestly like the Super Bowl of camera movements.
Yeah.
It's like you have the best talent with the best tools, with the wildest, craziest vision, choreographed dancers. David, thank you so much for joining us. Seriously, the best being able to learn a little bit about the behind-the-scenes process. I know Maisel comes back soon too as well.
December 6th.
December 6th. Okay, so Marvelous Miss Maisel's coming back December 6th. I personally can't wait to see it as well.
Right, because we have a crazy shot in the first episode that you'll be calling me, asking me how we did.
I hear it. I believe it. I believe it for sure.
Again, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Start designing a portfolio that you can be proud of by going to squarespace.com/IndieMogul, which will also give you 10% off that first purchase of a website or domain and a free 14-day trial. And if you want to know more about David's career in cinematography, we also have a podcast discussion with David that we're also going to include in the description down below.
All right, Indie Mogul. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.
At one point, we go so low that we actually look right into
The Condor.
our scissor lift in the middle of this block, and visual effects turned it into a moon, which was great.
It turned that was from a scissor lift.
Yeah, that is she turned the light into a moon.
Oh, it looks great. I totally believe it.